So Erika and I are really excited to have you here. We want to make this a conversation and we want to listen to your questions. We wanted to start by posing our own question to you, which you can just think about in your head for a few minutes as we go through some of our presentation. So the question that we'd like to pose is, when you think of the term cultural leader, kind of what pops into your head? Kind of if you can form an image of it, what would you think that looks like, sounds like, what kind of demographic might be in the cultural leader? What work might they be doing if they're a cultural leader? And just kind of think about that as we move forward.
So the Civic Knowledge Project is a civic engagement and civic friendship wing of the Humanities Division. It's been around now, and it's, I guess,
8th or 9th year?
I was going to say 9th year, and both Joanie and I have been on board for 7 years, and you maybe about 6 months before that. But what I wanted to do is first give a context by talking about what the Odyssey Project is. And so the Odyssey Project actually preceded the Civic Knowledge Project because it's a collaboration between the University of Chicago and the Illinois Humanities Council. Now in its 16th year, it's in 3 sites, just in Woodlawn at 63rd and Ingleside, in Rogers Park at the Howard Area Community Center, and in Pilsen, it's associated with the National Museum of Mexican Art, and it's in Spanish. And the easiest way to talk about what the Odyssey Project is to say that it has as its core kind of like a first-year experience here at U of C. The founder of this program, originally called the Clemente course around the world, Earl Shores, was very influenced by what he experienced here. And so, as Betty said, we have a liberal arts bent in that it is American history, art history, literature, philosophy, and critical thinking and writing, and it is seminar style. But the thing that makes it, or there are several things that make it quite different from what's happening here for an average first-year student, and that would be that it's exclusively for low-income adults who are at or below 150% of the poverty line. That's the first part. The second part is that they don't have to have a high school diploma, even though this is an extremely rigorous program. The program is free, along with textbooks, transportation, childcare, a social worker on hand, tutors, because we know that there's so many obstacles that would prevent our students from being able to participate from beginning to end. And then the last interesting thing, or one of the more interesting things, is that adults, you have to be an adult, but the average age is about 40. And so what that means is that we have many students who are in their 50s and 60s and even had a graduate at 87. We have found that our students have participated in and had so many different kinds of experiences long before they come into our classroom. And so those experiences inform the discussions. It's very text-driven and text-led, but we know that people come with those experiences, and how do we connect their reading of Othello with what has happened, for instance, in their lives? How do we talk about art history or Kant and connect it to the things that have been happening in their lives? And so they are, by and large, mothers. 99% of Odyssey graduates, English Odyssey graduates, North and South, are women. And we do have a few men, and then most of the Spanish Odyssey students come from Mexico or of Mexican descent and Central American. So imagine 30 students at each site starting out in the fall, twice a week in the evenings, talking about some of the great books, some of the traditions that come out of U of C, and they write papers, and then if they graduate from the program, they get 6 college credits from Bard College. And then what? So one of the things that we'll talk about today is that we have actively engaged, life-changed individuals who are starving and just really hungry for more engagement in the humanities. And what can we do as an organization and as individuals to keep them engaged and to feed that hunger. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
Excellent. Welcome to the new
Hi.
guests.
Did you eat there as well? You know? That's a different kind of change in climate.
Exactly. So just to catch you up, what we're posing to people just to think about in your own heads, you don't have to answer out loud yet, is what do you think about when you think of a cultural leader? What comes to mind? What does that really mean? How could you visualize an actual cultural leader? And Erika gave a little background on the Odyssey Project, and I'll just do it. You did a wonderful introduction, so I don't have that much more to say at the very, very beginning, but I've been lucky enough to have one of the best jobs in the city of Chicago because I get to meet with all these incredible human beings who work at small or mid-sized arts nonprofits all throughout the South Side. I mean, almost down to Indiana, really everywhere. Think of music, theater, visual art, dance, art collector groups, but also language centers, historical societies, anything that generally falls under arts and humanities at the core of what you do. So when I started about 7 years ago, we said, well, I got a list of names, why don't I begin? And we hosted one event at the Smart Museum, and I thought maybe 30 people would come, and over 100 individuals poured out from all these places and said, gosh, I had no idea that you're just down the street and you're just in the neighborhood next door. And there was this energy and synergy and excitement. So we started by making a directory, which I can get to anyone who wants one, of 150 small Southside arts organizations. And then we also have some affiliates who are groups that maybe are social service but also dabble in the arts, so groups that want to be associated with the network. And what I'm tasked with and what I love to do is think creatively about how do I build a network of these leaders and connect them to resources. That word resources we can talk about later, connected to the University of Chicago with the sole purpose of raising the visibility and building the capacity of those organizations, which serve so many different roles in their community. So we'll talk about two different things. I'll talk about two different things today, the Board Leadership Certificate Program and the Progressive Conversations. But we thought it might be nice to give you a little taste of what the Progressive Conversations look like by taking you on a mini video tour of it. So if you'll turn the lights off for our 2-minute sneak peek.
Progressive Conversations is a series of events where we highlight individuals, organizations, and ideas focused on the visual and performing arts, and we facilitate this process by leveraging the resources of the University of Chicago through the Civic Knowledge Project, the Southside Arts Humanities Network, and the Odyssey Project.
I guess I think of it as an opportunity for cultural leaders to come together and have a space, have a forum, have an opportunity to really engage in dialogue and understanding so that they are not working in isolation, so that they're working with one another, and in so doing, some magic happens.
If you're interested in arts, this is a good opportunity to meet people that you've never met before. Come together, share our knowledge, our understanding, and get a chance to contribute to what we call the cultural ecology of the community.
I find that each time we host one of these events, it's an opportunity to do something new, to do something different, and I think ultimately to engage people in very different ways.
Erika and I work very closely together to curate these conversations, picking voices that maybe don't get the fame and publicity that they very well deserve because they're off the beaten path or they're in a geographic zone of the city that is overlooked. And it feels very grassroots to me. It feels as if it's something where we're recognizing the art that is happening here in Chicago and helping to build upon it.
It's really kind of nice because they'll work very hard to bring artists, musicians, any other kind of culture workers that provide products that are a result of the human imagination.
We are putting a spotlight on small, medium, and large organizations that are doing amazing work and many people don't know about them. And the fact that we're bringing food and drink into that mix and going from neighborhood to neighborhood is completely radical. I think everything about it is radical.
If you are interested in the progressive conversation, jump on our Facebook page so that you can follow every month and come see an off the beaten path arts organization or food-based organization, meet cultural leaders who've been doing this for over 20 years, as well as brand new emerging groups that are just now getting their footing. Come out, eat with us, drink with us, and be part of the conversation.
All right, so this is, again, just a way to kind of visualize what it is that we do. Over the last 7 years, we've cultivated deep relationships and partnerships with these organizations. You saw little tidbits of them on the last video, but think music, theater, dance, visual art. And we accept lots of different kinds, lots of different structures. Sometimes they're organized through block clubs, sometimes they're partnerships with the Parks Department. There's a whole range of cultural activity as we define it. And so this is a map of the South Side, and there are many more than this, but this is to give you the idea. We bring them together with the hope of creating a set of colleagues. We've done that through our Southside Roundtables, which is a system of meeting once a month, every month, over 6 months with a trained facilitator and a small group of colleagues, so that someone who might be in a completely different neighborhood in a different art form has a go-to person to say, okay, nuts and bolts, how do I write this grant? How do I work with my board? How do I manage this staff member? We're creating a set of colleagues that previously were all working in isolation. And then we look at the University of Chicago, and we think of it as this giant, complex set of resources. And I think we've been creative in seeing resources and identifying them, and in the process of identifying them, those resources or people say, oh, I have something to give. I have something that I didn't know was very valuable and can be put to good use in the arts ecology, as Oyekunle described it. So we said, okay, clearly there are a lot of professors, and many of them are engaged in the Odyssey Project, teaching their coursework to this new population. And clearly there are a lot of undergraduate students and graduate students. In addition, there's this whole level of staff members who know how to do marketing, fundraising, technology, strategic planning, human resources, volunteer management. A detail that blows my mind is that there are 400 professional fundraisers at the University of Chicago. It's like an army if you think about them marching forward. So they all have this skill set that is applicable to arts nonprofits who are trying to survive in the rapidly changing world of just keeping the lights on and the doors open, let alone creating incredible cultural assets. So we looked at that, and then we looked at alumni, and we said, there are many people who are at the later end of their career, and they're about to go into retirement, and they have years and years of experience and passion and interest, but have never been included or asked to be connected in this way. So the steering committee that is composed of about 9 to 10 leaders of these small arts organizations said, Joanie, we love one-off workshops, and we love coming together and meeting one another, and we love the Southside Roundtable where we really meet a group of colleagues, but what we need is a pool of highly trained individuals who want to serve on the boards of arts nonprofits. And I very naively said, oh, I wonder if we could make that happen. Why don't we start putting feelers out? And the Joyce Foundation was really instrumental in saying, we believe in this, we think diversifying who should be on the boards and who has access, and specifically making it by the South Side, for the South Side, on the South Side, everything very local here. They took a risk, and I thought, maybe we'll get 8 people on 8 organizations. And the very first year we had 42 applicants with, the word just kind of spread without much of a marketing budget. And next week, I can let you know we're into the 4th year. We have 85 people coming to the informational lunch a week from today. So it's hot and it's growing. It's mushroomed. In part because, again, I think the work that Erika and I do, we create these opportunities for people to see themselves as resources. And then we kind of play, I like to joke that I'm a bit of a cultural yenta, or like a cultural matchmaker. I take those who have skills in marketing and fundraising and legal, there's the law school and the medical center. I mean, when it really stretches, you see how wide this university is, and then connect them to these arts organizations who need a whole host of skill sets and who need networks. They want to reach younger populations that understand social media. So really, I have not found someone who's not qualified to be on a board member yet. You just you have to ask them what they have and what they could give and what they could bring and what they're passionate about, and it's a matter of making smart matches. And so this last slide just shows you the different ways that we are situated squarely in the Humanities Division, thinking about the arts, but also redefining what it might mean to play the role that we play at a university, connecting the incredible cultural gems of the South Side with these individuals inside the university, and making one-to-one connections. So it's not a top-down, one person says, now we're going to do this in the community. It's really somebody who's passionate about the Jazz Philharmonic joining the board of the Jazz Philharmonic Society, and then suddenly bringing with her 10 or 12 people from her office to that event. It's been incredibly fun and rewarding to be part of this.
You can move to the next slide, do you mind?
Sure. So
actually, maybe
do you want to
slide to.
You want to go over
to here. And so, one thing, as Joanie mentioned when we talked about the resources of the university and the resources of the community surrounding the university, I wanted to think about how we define resources and how we even define who's part of the university community and where do people fit. And so one major step in that direction was to tease out and start to define and redefine who was part of the university community. Mm-hmm. So a collaboration with photographer Dawood Bey and the Renaissance Society and Odyssey led to being part of a portrait series, a show that he had about a year and a half ago at the Ren. And so on the left is an Odyssey graduate who actually we just announced about 2 weeks ago is also now a Diverse Voices Fellow of Cartemquin Films. So he will be working on films and docs throughout the year. But this is part of a show about community. And it had very specific questions. And one thing it had is, what would happen if you put someone who might teach next to someone who you might not know who's a University of Chicago student, in the sense that he is an Odyssey Project student taught by UFC faculty, and actually the assistant curator of the Ren, Hamza Walker, teaches art history. And so one thing that came out of that was that many of the Odyssey graduates who were asked to participate in, who sat as portraits said, well, I don't really feel like I'm part of the university. My professor is, my tutor is a student here, but I'm not part of the university. And, don't feel necessarily welcome on campus. I can't borrow books. But it led to a series of conversations that we had in small groups about what that meant and how maybe we could change that and, again, redefine that. And then out of that came more discussion, more portraits that then traveled around the country and are continuing to travel. And now some of these portraits are going to be in a show that opens next week at DePaul. So it's this kind of it's a way of talking about things very locally and on campus, but obviously talking about it in a deeper and larger, more global way. And so that's one example of this kind of partnership. And it's also, the REN was a host of one of our progressive conversations. And so it ends up as that word ecology, that the notion that we're very connected and we've created an environment where people feel there's a certain amount of trust. And with that trust comes interesting and exciting friendships and developments and projects out of that.
And just to piggyback on that as well, sometimes I define what we do, what Erika and I each do, and it sounds as if they might be in different bubbles or slightly different populations that we're serving. But there's so much very, very genuine natural overlap. For example, several of the Odyssey Arts graduates who have completed maybe 1 year and possibly the bridge course too, so possibly 2 years, have then applied for and been accepted to the board leadership program. And I think 3 of them recently have graduated from that, which again gets to that initial question of what could a cultural leader look like? How could different voices change the way we think about arts organizations? And for those who aren't maybe aware of the board structure, nonprofits are run by a set of volunteers who are the board members who are responsible for hiring and firing the executive director, but also fundraising and making sure that
Fiscally
responsible. So it's a very powerful position, and historically it hasn't been as inclusive as it could be, and
geared especially towards maybe more deep-pocketed or deeper-pocketed folks. But then again, if we think of, as Joanie mentioned, 3 Odyssey graduates have graduated from this program and have been, I think, courted by many of the nonprofits. It helps to just push and explore what it might mean to be a cultural leader. And given that they're ready for another step in engagement or a deeper step in engagement, it's been great.
And so that's why I want to give a little background. I think we've gave more to you is the progressive conversations you saw a short video on, but it's really this wonderful growing kind of, I think of it like a stone that's gathering things as it goes forward, place where people who've maybe been part of the board leadership program and part of Arts Odyssey can come together at one arts organization that's featured at, we just did one at the Beverly Arts Center, we've done several in Bridgeport and Pilsen, all over the South Side. And it's a way to come together and meet more individuals. So maybe in your first year cohort you didn't find the right match, but then someone at Human Resources came to the second progressive conversation and met up with Diasporal Rhythms, which is this incredible arts collector group, and joined the board of that group. So it's this monthly ongoing series that grew out of a one-day tour through the Graham School, where we called it progressive because we ate at every single site. Breakfast, snacks, lunch, and
many
dinner,
places,
dessert.
Over 2 Saturdays.
Over 2 Saturdays.
Not just one day.
The first one was 2 Saturdays. The next one we did a very long day. So we do those about once a year, and then every month we highlight just one group.
And I'd like to add one part about how the progressive conversation now, it serves many purposes. Another purpose is that every organization that has hosted a progressive conversation is currently in some kind of partnership with Arts Odyssey or will be. And so it ends up, it has this generative effect that it adds to this energy, and the engine just kind of chugs along, and it reinforces the idea that we can partner in many different ways, and that every time we have a progressive conversation, when Odyssey graduates come and their friends and people who support them and their families, along with board leadership people, network organizations and individuals from those organizations, that every time they're in the same space, like a new connection or a new facet is happening, so that it's almost like a hall of mirrors, that you end up looking and saying, like, oh, I know you because of this. Like another example would be that we have 10 Odyssey graduates who are paid docents at the Smart Museum. And so they were paid for their 3-month training, and then they're paid to lead tours. And this came out of the idea that I was like, undergraduates get paid to be docents at the Smart, wouldn't it be great if Odyssey graduates got to be paid? And so because of our relationship, one, the network, but also the work that we had done, and because it's a university resource, it was a very easy step to take and say, well, what would happen if we brought, basically like peanut butter and chocolate together? You get Reese's cups, like it's a natural thing, right? And out of that, for those who are not allergic to peanuts, but that everything that we do is happening. I mean, we put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into it, but that we're looking at natural partnerships and natural ways for individuals to engage and benefit from those partnerships. So they are currently shadowing other tours, and will start in June. And then we'll continue to go as they celebrate the 40th anniversary, the SMART. They'll be in the learning classroom, which are the gray main galleries, and work as ambassadors indefinitely. And then the idea is that another 10 would come about a year later. And so that's one of those things where when we come together at a progressive conversation, people say, I'm here because I am a SMART docent and an Odyssey graduate, or I was a scholar in residence at Dorchester Projects for a year, or I am a docent at the Hyde Park Arts Center. And because of those relationships that we have, it makes it easier for them to maybe have a second opportunity at a different institution, and then it reinforces our relationship with those organizations.
Absolutely. I did bring a couple of extra videos in case people want to say, well, show me in depth what 1-2 dance looks like, or show me what a super small art emerging group. I brought a video of 60 inches from center, so I'm willing to share that if there's interest in it. I guess I just wanted to hit home one more point, and maybe it's already been said, but I think a lot about the types of connections that are made in our world. Danielle Allen had spoken about, the former dean of the humanities, had spoken about looking them through a lens of two different kinds. There's bonding relationships, ones where you might go to your school or your church or your friend group and you spend time with people that maybe are somewhat like-minded to you, maybe a little bit different, but still you have something in common, and you spend time with them so that your relationships get deeper. And that's what she would call a bonding relationship. And then the other is called a bridging relationship, something that takes you outside of your normal loop and across certain geographic or non-geographic barriers to meeting unlikely collaborators, maybe people that have a lot that could offer you, but you didn't even know they existed. I think about that a lot in terms of our technology and how much access there is to data, but sometimes it's hard to find what find what people you're supposed to be talking to. So I think that the work that Erika and I do, one of the elements that makes it radical is we're building bridges, we're creating these opportunities for unlikely combinations of people to come together in one room over a common artistic or humanities-based purpose. And when that happens, there is genuine trust that it's like palpable, it's in the room, that is created. And that is one of the ways that we work towards the larger missions of CKP, overcome some racial, economic, and social divisions on the South Side, which are real and palpable as well.
Do you want to talk about the cultural leader or bring it up again?
Say again?
The cultural leader. To maybe put that as a question, and then we can always.
So does anyone want to be brave and tell me what they first thought of when they heard the word cultural leader?
Arts administrators in major organizations, major cultural institutions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other first image that popped in your head when you said what is
like cultural leader? You hear that expression, right? Cultural leader.
I always think of those sorts of people whose enthusiasm is really kind of contagious, who can really just captivate a room, but also really get other people on board for putting effort into something that maybe they never considered participating in.
Mm-hmm. Any other? That's it?
Someone who's a respected voice in the arts. It could be an artist or an arts administrator, but someone who people would respect opinion about some sort.
And why would they respect the opinion? I wonder, because I think that there are certain people who come to mind, and I think, okay, cultural leader, and I respect. But why do you think they might be respected where others
Because
are?
of their body of work, perhaps, that they've contributed to the art society.
Mhm.
I thought of this completely opposite, but I thought of this concept of that was just introduced to me last week, and I'm probably going to butcher the conceptual name, but it was called emerging leadership or
Okay.
emergence leadership, and it was talking about a different way to approach leadership, and it coming from not one leader, but from a number of different leaders in the community. So I heard cultural leader, and I was like, I wonder if this can be parallel to this emergence leadership, or I wonder if this is just one, or is it multiple? So.
Absolutely. What would you like to say
Well,
on that?
if asked, I think that if I were to see on the cover of a magazine that someone is a Chicago cultural leader, I would say with almost certainty that that person is either an arts administrator very high up. I think of someone like, say, Michelle Boone. There's certain names, certain people who either have a lot of political or financial clout, have done things or led things that are far-reaching, throughout the city or throughout the country, depending on what scope we're talking about. What I usually don't think about is, say, an Odyssey graduate who might be a mother of 4 who's been on public assistance for many years, participated in this program and said, I always loved the arts and humanities, and now I can kind of dive in, and then dives in with gusto, and then out of that participates in so many different things. And I'm happy that my Odyssey graduates are able to see themselves as cultural leaders. I'm thrilled when Joanie says, you should have seen how many organizations were talking to a particular Odyssey graduate, trying to court her to be, on their board or to talk with them. But it's that kind of redefining. I like, Ray, that you said that there were people who were like, you heard that term, like the emerging or emergent leader, because that's relatively new, I think. Correct me, though, Larry, I don't know.
I was just wondering, I agree with everything that everybody's saying. I was just wondering if have you run into any blowback, let's say, from the people that actually, the artistic directors of these organizations? Because, if you define leadership as the board or the administrator, there's the boards I've been on, it's usually the artistic director who thinks that they're controlling the board, and when the board decides that they're not going to be controlling the board, you have a problem.
That's a great question. I have not. I found the opposite. I have found EDs of these small arts organizations who are hungry for board members, for more people who can expose them to other networks that they've been tapping their networks for a long time, and they really want to get somebody on board who is enthusiastic to take notes, even to be the secretary on the board is kind of like, oh yes, we've got somebody who loves that. Or
they want people to be on the board. They don't want the board to be leading them. And that's the question I'm wondering about. Is there anything to worry about, or any special discussion that has to be had with the people that you're talking to prepare them for those kinds of sensitive issues? I think.
Well, not at this point, but I also think that, it's not cherry picking, but because we talked about how we're part of this community of organizations, and so we've built that trust, and so they know that what they're getting is quality, but that we have same aims. So it's not that we're in conflict. So it's not as if the executive director is saying, well, I want to go in this direction, and the board seems to want to go in a different direction, and that leads to potential tension. But instead, it's because of the board leadership training program, it's because of the network, it's because of progressive conversations that people were already like-minded, and there's this mutual trust, and so it makes it much easier.
And what it makes me think is I should also explain a little bit more about the board leadership program. Let me just back up a step. So the way that it works is out of all 150 groups, we let them apply, we encourage them to apply, and we highlight only 10 each year. And those 10 we work in deep partnership with. They get to do a round table among themselves, and they set out what kind of board members they're looking for. They receive one-on-one consultation with a consultant about what's on their board, what their strengths are, what weaknesses there are. So there's all of this interaction with those 10 featured organizations. And then in the past, we've admitted only 25 students, although this year we may have to increase that because there's huge demand. And then all of those individuals, which we call a cohort, get 12 hours of training over 4 Saturdays with experts, could say experts in the field, someone from the Arts and Business Council, Lisa Tilke, someone from our law school here, the Elizabeth Mill-Nickel and Jeff Leslie, to talk about legal and fiduciary responsibilities, and then one of the nation's top grassroots fundraisers, Jackie Kaplan-Perkins, is dynamite, and she inspires the whole group to see how they're able to, you don't have to just have deep pockets to be an effective fundraiser. So after they've gone through those 12 hours of training, and these organizations have, I'll show a sample video of a video that's created on their organization. Then it's this matching process. It's, who are your top 3? Who are your top 3? Let's have you started in conversation. And then it's really up to the organization to finish the vetting process and elect their next board member. We're trying to play that role of catalyst and connector and convener. There's several different words that are used. But yeah, why don't I, show of hands, who wants to see Motul dance? Okay, as an example. I'll show you, this is what is...
But I think one thing to highlight, as she said, is the idea that there have been many conversations, not just the progressive conversation, but there have been many opportunities for individuals to come together so that maybe what traditionally could happen on a board, tensions between the artistic director and the board or the ED and the board might be avoided because of these deep connections we've fostered over some years now. I think that's one aspect of it.
And I would just say it's definitely talked about in the board leadership program. There's a talk about the culture of a board, what it's like just to join a board when everybody else has been used to one way of doing things and you're coming on. Oftentimes 2 or 3 people join one board at the same time, so they have a colleague to say, what do I do in this situation? Or they get a mentor, they get adopted by a more senior board member and get woven into the process.
And then one other aspect is the idea that I think that many of the organizations are able to see the changing climate, like you were talking, before the other, and so they know that there are differing needs, new interests, new constituencies, and how do you begin to bring those folks in and new audiences if your board doesn't necessarily reflect that as well. So I think that because of a number of issues, but that being, I think, a very strong reason to come with like an open hand and open mind, and can lead to avoiding some of that tension. Right.
And so here's a video of Motul, which is an established organization and always is open to seeking new board members.
Started in 1972. We were drumming and dancing behind one of our elders at various colleges and universities. We saw the impact of the music and dance, and we decided to take it to another level. Motul means person, but its spiritual meaning, even deeper than that, is the essence of humanity. Motul is dedicated to the preservation and perpetuation of African art, history, and culture through song, dance, music, and folklore in a way that many may not have seen before.
Our performances offer a positive reflection of African American culture, and we invite all of our audiences to participate in that in an active way. So it's not unusual to be at a Motul concert and see people jumping up in the aisles, scrambling up trying to get on the stage, and we really welcome it because we feel that the company is making authentic connection with our audiences, and we take pride in that. I'm also excited about the expansion of our arts education programs. We call it ACE, Arts for Community Empowerment, and we serve about 1,000 kids every year in the city's most economically underserved communities, and we do this at no cost to the children. So we're looking to expand that and find a way where we can work more directly with even more children to have them unleash their own creative potential.
To understand the value of themselves, the value of discipline, and the value of conflict resolution, because in the drumming we're constantly solving problems. Rhythm is the balance of speech and action, and discipline to do what they have to do on a high level, not to settle for mediocrity, but to constantly challenge yourself so that you can bring out the true beauty of what it is, whatever it is you're engaged in.
Part of the reason why we have so much upheaval and violence in our communities is because they don't know enough about themselves. And it's wonderful to know about math and science, but until you know something about yourself as a human being and where you come from and what your heritage is, you're kind of at a loss, and you may not value yourself, especially if the images you see of yourself in the media aren't always positive. So I'm really excited about this program, and I invite all of you to come out and become a part of the Motul Dance Theater family and to find out a little bit more about who we are and what we do.
So just to put it in context, this as being featured as one of the top, the 10, not top 10, but the 10 organizations, this is one of the benefits. You get a video that we produce to highlight the incredible work that they're doing, and then they can use that video to further their board development, their board leadership, and just their audience development in general.
Purposes.
And funding. Well, we got a video producer for it. Yeah. So that's part of what the Joyce Foundation helps us fund. And the Chicago Community Trust and the Illinois Arts Council. And
so now that you have a 4-year history, at least through the board development program, what is the 4-year, what's happened in 4 years from some of those first ones? Are the people still on the board?
That's a great question. So just to highlight back to you, the very first year we worked with a wonderful PhD student that Betty helped connect us to, and she developed a model for how we measure this. And we developed a short tool that we check in with all the participants at 6 months, 12 months, and 18 months out from the programming. And we ask questions such as, are you on a board? The simplest. If you're on a board, have you moved to a leadership position? If you're in a leadership position, are you the head of, for example, are you head of a committee? How else are you involved? What other organizations are you now connected to that you might not have been in the past? And we're gathering that data. We have had, just anecdotally, I think several successes. Two different organizations received 3 new board members. Kenan Renard is one of them. She's on the board of Yorba Contemporary Arts Foundation. Pardon me, they changed their name to Yorba Arts Foundation. And she was she started here at the University of Chicago Presents and then worked in the for-profit company world in marketing, and now is actually at the Illinois Arts Arts Alliance, but she developed a marketing plan, a logo, a website. As a board member, she took the skill set she knows how to do in communications and immediately helped this very small and emerging arts organization. They received 2 other board members as well from the program. Global Girls received 3 board members. Just last week, Erin Mulrooney was voted onto the board of the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic, which does programming throughout the South Side, even though they have a North Side residence. And then I can say there's one person, Miranda Swanson, who just joined the Chicago Public Art Group that I know about. And she then recruited another colleague of hers, Carl Nash, in the humanities, to join as well. So it's more than just what we do with one connection, it's what happens from connections of those connections. Of course, there also are sadder stories. One of our favorite organizations, the Neighborhood Writing Alliance, which did score several new board members, it disbanded after many years of doing incredible work. So it's sad when we feel the impact of a cultural organization going under. It's not all successes, but it's exciting to see. And I would say that anecdotally, I should look at the numbers, but many people end up in a leadership role within the board. So chairing a committee or taking an officer position.
Any other questions at all about?
I apologize for being late. But my name's Yvette LeGrand, and I used to be a management consultant for United Way when they were started. And we did a lot with organizational development and board development of the organizations around the city. And certainly one of the things in terms of trying to do board development, and especially in this kind of environment, is the idea of the benefit to the board recruit and the board person in terms of the things they develop. And of course, we all know in this environment, any kind of developed skill set that you can put down is critical. And with these organizations, there is a real opportunity to make some substantive input.
Yes.
And to develop your skills as you go along, be they the technical skills, be they the financial analysis skills, be they, frankly, human relations skills for those of us who need them. And that's probably the one that you don't put on the resume.
But essential.
And also the benefit to the organization of getting that strength, getting that point of view. And I think it's critical. One of my pet peeves back then was people who left their other hat at home when they came to the board meeting. And they did get so caught up in the mission that they kind of neglected the grounding and the analysis of saying, okay, these are the things that are important. And you mentioned the Writing Alliance, and I don't know what happened. And when I saw that, I'm like, oh, couldn't they have, couldn't have gotten some assets and some resources to them? But the idea of people who left their business hats at their office when they went to the boardroom and didn't do the kind of analysis that they need to do, but also the balance of, you may have your business hat on, or your analyst hat on, your UFC hat on about how you think something ought to be approached, and the organization and the other board members also bring you to another point so that you look at that differently. But you also say to them, what about this, what about this, what about this, what about this? And in today's society, an added level of mounting the criticisms and the questions that will be raised from the larger society, from people who aren't as interested as you, but they're people that you know who question your sanity for doing this. And you have to learn to counter their concerns and their questions. And in doing that, bringing that to the organization's board, it strengthens their case and their ability to make their case.
Well, I appreciate everything that you've said, and I've just been thinking about my last month, and I had a wonderful contact with someone in the Human Relations Department here at the university, and I told her about what we do, and as happens at the university when it's, not everyone knows what's going on with every project, they said, wow, I had no idea that this even existed. This is a wonderful staff development program. There are so many people who have a skill set but want to try a different skill set, or want to they only do X, Y, and Z in this one role, but they want to try something else. Let's send this to all benefits eligible individuals at the University of Chicago. And within hours of that email being sent out, we had 60 more people sign up, and it was an incredible leap just to get the word out to the right individual. And when you frame it, and the stories that I have heard include people saying, I went in with this giving back model, but I got so much out of this experience. I tried a new skill, I learned this, I met amazing colleagues, I got to feel a part of the arts education piece of the Jazz Philharmonic. I mean, people really do get a lot. They get a different thing than maybe serving on the board of the Art Institute or a very massive organization, because we, by design, wanted this to be a working board experience. We want people to take their skills and passions and networks and put them to use. And there doesn't have to be, many organizations have a give-get, but we had one where the give-get was $18 per year. So the threshold for getting involved, there's a whole range from $18 a year to $5,000 a year within 10 organizations. So it's an exciting process, and it's messy, and some people go through our program and decide, I am never going to be on a board.
Right, I didn't realize.
Because you hear you're financially responsible and this, and we think that's a good service, because one difficult board member can derail a lot of good work.
Or being able to go forward with your eyes open, with clear ideas of what's expected of you. And what role you can play, and how your actions and ideas can influence an organization, whether benefit the organization or to its detriment.
Is there more question?
Yeah, I just want to say I admire this work. I think it's a phenomenal idea. It's really interesting, and I'm glad to see it's continuing after 4 years. And just, I've been thinking about boards and how any strong arts organization needs a strong board, and they need that communication. And it's also a two-way street. It's the board members have to fulfill their responsibility, but they also have to be educated by the nonprofit staff of what their responsibilities are. I'm just curious how long the program is for everyone that's in the program, and I kind of got an idea of where you get people that apply from your networking events. But what do how do you
I'd love to tell you that. That's like a softball. So you apply by May 1st, and then the program runs only one time a year in the fall, from October to December. And it's over 4 Saturdays, one full day Saturday, which is really fun because the arts organizations are there, and it's like a cultural fair, and you get to meet all of the different leaders. And then 3 more half days where you have a 3-hour workshop, seminar, hands-on stuff about fundraising, there's organizational development during the first day, fundraising, legal and fiduciary responsibilities, and management between staff and board. And that, it's not comprehensive in terms of, you'll know everything you'll ever need to know on a board, but it's a really good first step. And I would say many people, maybe the majority of people, join boards without ever having learned this stuff. So
or
this much. So it's a great thing for someone who's maybe new to Chicago but has been on a board in another place, or new to boards in general. Someone who says, gosh, I'm in my mid-20s, my mid-30s, I've never been on a board, but I love music, or I love dance, or I don't know what I love, but I'd be open to loving something.
Or someone who participated who had been on a couple of boards and said, there was so much I didn't know. You know what I mean? And, thankfully, I now know some of that. And this is after he had been on the board. He is and the education staff at the Hyde Park Arts Center, where I'm on the board. And so it's good because I think, some of the conversations we've had, we've said, I'm like, did you realize this? Did you know this? Like the impact and the kind of the implications of some of it.
Exactly. And some people go through it and say, gosh, I could be much more effective as a volunteer in this capacity. I am not made for a board
Or not now.
at this time. This is not my passion. But I would highly encourage you to come to a lunch meeting that we're having next week, which is on the 16th of April. It was so large we had to move it to a bigger room, so now we're in Classics 110. And then you get an application and you apply by May 1st.
And there's free lunch.
And it's free lunch. It'll be yummy free lunch. But yeah, what, do you have something in particular like that you could imagine yourself on, a kind of an organization?
Well, I'm finishing school, so I can't get on a board right now. But
you're
I'm going to
interested.
consider being on boards next year.
Nice.
I like that. No
That's
pressure.
fine,
No
no
pressure.
pressure. I'm just
You
curious.
will not be leaving here. No. That's you were asking how we did it. That's how we do it. We stand at the door. No.
Mm-hmm. Another question?
Yeah, I guess this is a bit of a silly question, but I'm from the Humanities Division, and I loved it. I completely think these are fantastic programs. I'm not trying to be critical in any way. I'm just wondering if there's a way. The one thing I hear the faculty being called on to teach in the Odyssey program, but I hear the staff and people in the law school and sort of the professional schools who have practical expertise being tapped, but I don't hear the philosophers. I don't hear. I'm not hearing a lot about using
The faculty?
Faculty as capital, or graduate students, or the undergraduates.
Well, many,
yeah.
That's a great
many
question.
undergraduates and grad students participate in Odyssey in many different ways. Not only in the year-long course, but in the work that I do is mostly outside of the classroom. It is how to stay engaged in the humanities. So I host about 40 to 50 events every year with the idea of increasing exposure to many of the organizations within the network, but also outside of that. And so I need help with that, and I get that help from undergraduates and grad students. But the idea that they can be tutors and mentors for the students, because many of the Odyssey students don't have high school diplomas or GEDs, so to write a paper would require a lot of support. So there are many opportunities for folks who are faculty or students.
And I would kind of turn it back on you a little too.
I do have a suggestion.
Exactly, because when I started building this program, I first thought anyone who wants to be part of it can do it, but I maybe had a preconceived notion that faculty members are incredibly busy and already on so many committees that it might be hard for them to serve on a arts nonprofit board out of campus in addition. And I don't want to, by my own assumption, to rule people out, but I wanted to.
I'm not sure that anything that I'm suggesting is something. I know you guys have philosophy there already, so and it might not even be the right.
But I would love to hear.
So having faculty on the board might not be the right way
Right.
to connect them up with the arts organizations. But you might ask the arts organizations, is there somebody on campus that if you could talk to somebody who, is there anybody working on
I have done that.
you would like to explore with a faculty member, to make your art better? That would be that level of creativity. I would think that you might be able to get some.
Well, that has happened, and I'll give one example. Rebecca Zorak was really interested in doing some Afrocobra research, and so I connected her to several network members who were, experts in the field, who have a lot of knowledge on the subject, and they were able to influence her teaching of the course, and she had some context to share with them of how things were going. So that's one way that it happens, but I'd be very open to
Well, it seems to me like
thinking.
the way to go about it would be to ask the arts organization.
The arts organization first.
The directors of not the people, the administrators, but the artistic director. If there's
Sometimes it's the same
anybody
person.
who'd like to- any other topics or people, and then the same thing. You'd be a matchmaker with the faculty. You might be able to get something going that would make people very happy. I know the Arts Center is very interested in that kind of making these kinds of connections.
Yeah, the Gray Center I know does a lot with
So
that
they're
too.
more interested in across disciplines. This would be connecting up with the actual arts makers in the community, which I think would be great. The other suggestion, Dan, I know I'm not saying, you don't
No,
have
no,
to,
you don't have to say. My husband
These are just trying to
is
say-
very.
It seems to me the Odyssey Project, I don't know if maybe it already does, but the core courses, that's what we teach these great books. So I think it would be fantastic to have like one, go to the head of one of the core sequences, or go to the guy, the master of the college who runs these things and say, do you have any money to help support one event where we would craft it with one of the sequences that's reading the same thing that we're reading, bring the kids in.
We've had, they're not kids, but we have done that. And then, especially with art history, my husband is Richard Neer, who does stuff with, but many things in that, but also CMS, and history and kind of romance languages. We offered, because the university had these great resources, for 3 summers we were able to offer a video telling project where Odyssey graduates had access to video cameras and computers from the language center. And made these fantastic videos on democracy. And we got expertise from folks who were there. So we've had a lot of things like that. Sometimes what will happen is that I will ask Odyssey graduates, and we now have, I guess maybe 1,200, 1,500 of them. What would you like to see? What would you like to hear? And then I will try to make that happen. Some people will volunteer to lead a tour, to give a talk, lecture, and we get a fair amount of support and a big audience, but then some things there's not necessarily a good match. What the students or the graduates want and what the university is offering aren't necessarily the same. But we've had many successes too.
I want to be cognizant of time, but I just want to make sure that we leave you feeling invited and connected to what we do. Every month we have a free progressive conversation, which is at an arts or culture or food-based organization throughout the South Side.
Maybe we can give just really quick examples. We were at Growing Power at Iron Street Farms. Just about 3 weeks ago, we were at Beverly Arts Center. We've been at Dorchester Projects and Archive House, the Listening House, Black Cinema House, Renaissance Society, Hyde Park Arts Center, Joe B. So many different
We've
places.
been to Pullman. There's a ton happening in Pullman with food justice and with arts.
And most night. And we are hoping to be able to share with you soon where our April progressive conversation.
Exactly. And then in addition, if you or anyone you know would like to get more information on the board leadership program, please come talk to me. Let me get your info. You're invited to come to the free lunch a week from now where there'll be more information and people who have gone through the project and who could speak firsthand. I think that always does a better job than me telling you how wonderful it will be. They will tell you how much they've enjoyed it. And then we'd just love to keep in touch. So if there's a way to, I don't know if you have a sheet of paper to get.
And one more plug. If there's something interesting that you know you're doing or you know someone's doing and you'd like to share with us, we will happily share that with Progressive Conversations folks, Odyssey Project, Arts Odyssey, because people are hungry for things and just don't know what's out there. And fortunately, we now have so many things happening that it's really just choosing, which to do first. So.
It's a good problem to have.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for your thoughtful questions and your
Thank you.
time.